Subcommittee by the Telecommunications Board of a complaint by Jim Bemis. Proposed response to that. Complaint by Mr. Bemis is rhetorically charged critique of the dysfunctional Telecommunication Board's failure to meet his interpretation of the ordinance, as well as criticisms of city staff and the alleged failure of the City Council to meet its duties and responsibilities to keep up with changes in technology and regulatory requirements. Several of his assumptions are open to question, but his points appear to be: 1. The application and nominating process of City Council has failed to produce the wide range of volunteer board members and resources required to make timely decisions and recommendations under the current ordinance. 2. City staff is performing a greater role in preparing documents to support and assist the dysfunctional board members than he thinks is appropriate. 3. There's been a high turnover in board membership and officers and poor attendance records by members of the board. 4. Board members have violated the state's FOIA law by discussing issues by email, and that the records of the board and its committee meetings have been poorly maintained. And 5. The board has responded to few citizen requests or complaints and has made few recommendations to the City Council since 2006. The specific action requested from Mr. Bemis to satisfy his concerns he has is that the full board join with the city staff and City Council in a team effort to inventory the community's telecommunication needs and jointly update the board's administrative rules in the telecommunication ordinance. I propose for the committee response: the appointment of the committee to review the existing telecommunication ordinance has considered the complaint of Mr. Bemis. We're prepared to make recommendations for changes in the existing telecommunication board ordinance that will allow the board to better meet its responsibilities. We find this the appropriate response to the complaint and recommend that the board take no further action on the complaint, which would be a motion to table. Any discussion with board members?
Does the board have the ability to just table something?
This committee can take this recommendation to the board, then the board could look at it and vote as a full board to basically say complaint. There's two options to not take any more action on the complaint. So the board could do that.
It's basically been addressed
right
by the committee, and then no further action to be taken.
Yeah. Do you have any comment? Or?
No, it seems crystal clear to me.
Okay, Mr. Bemis, do you have any comment?
I don't believe for this forum. I'm going to wait till the telecom board meeting where we have it televised, etc.
Very good. I will move adoption of this response and report.
I will second that.
Second. Any further discussion by members of the committee? Hearing none, call for the ayes and nays. All in favor of adopting it, signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? The motion carries and it's referred back to the telecommunications board. The second item on our agenda is the proposed revisions to the telecommunication ordinance, and from the notes I took in our last meeting of suggested changes, I have integrated those into this. Fritz has a copy of the existing ordinance if you wish it to make comparisons. The changes are highlighted in yellow.
The copies we have been distributing to the public, they're highlighted in gray.
Okay. And then there's a renumbering of B where we collapsed one of the provisions and moved the final And I changed it in a number of places to franchisees, because the city only has authority over those who have franchises, and they don't have any authority over cell phone operators or anything else. And I changed oversee to regularly review. That's based on the city attorney's memorandum. There are 3 provisions that the committee could consider striking. As Mr. Bemis pointed out, the citizen members of this board are incapable of keeping up with the changes in the infrastructure and regulatory procedures. It's beyond our capacity to address them and keep up with them. And absent the city recruiting and appointing experts beyond our capacity, a recommendation that those provisions that are causing the problems be stricken from the ordinance, which would be the definition number 4 on telecommunication infrastructure, on page 3, which would be A6, funding for the development and maintenance of the telecommunication infrastructure. And on the last page, which would be number B5, identify telecommunication needs and solutions in the city and define innovative approaches to the use of expanding digital capacity. By striking those, we could overcome the duties and responsibilities that have been pointed out we're incapable of meeting. And I see little indication, since the city has actually reduced the number of employees by almost 10%, and it's funding no new programs, that there would be any additional staff support to work on those telecommunication issues for the city. Those we have not voted on, and would open that for discussion, or any of the other parts of the ordinance.
It'll certainly fit with our discussions at the last subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, Mr. Bemis points out that we're really incapable of dealing with such things as satellite communications, satellite broadcast, other things that are beyond both our intellectual capacity and the city's regulatory authority. What's the pleasure of the committee on recommending those be struck or maintained or referred to the board for discussion?
I would move to adopt the proposal to strike those 3 particular subsections.
I'll second. Any discussions? Public comment? Members of the board?
Pretty clear?
Mr. Bemis?
Same comment. I'm, of course, disappointed that the board, your subcommittee, has chosen to take a step backward to where we were in 2003. I'd hope that we can move forward with a full examination of the total telecommunications infrastructure. That's up to the full board, so I'll discuss that there.
Okay. Well, I think you did an excellent job of pointing out that we're incapable of doing those things. And the city council needs to know that. Okay, back to the board. Any further discussion? Second the motion. Any further discussion? Call for the ayes and nays. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to strike those 3 sections. I'll entertain a motion for adoption of the other changes as highlighted to reflect the discussion from the last meeting.
Move to adopt the changes highlighted in the document, forward it to the full board for approval.
Second, any discussion? Same response, Mr. Bemis?
Same response.
All right, thank you. Staff?
If I may, sir, as we go forward with many of these changes, and if the board or this committee would want to examine the possibility of possibly changing the name of the board, if it's not going to be a wide, broad mandate for this board, and the city council agrees with that maybe Telecommunications Board is a little disingenuous in terms of a title for the board itself. And then I would also encourage this committee to, which I'm sure you already have, but to re-examine the ordinance after the changes have been made to ensure that once a definition or something has been struck, that it doesn't show up somewhere else in the ordinance and create confusion by its appearance somewhere else in another clause.
Okay, yeah, I anticipate that when we present this to the full board, that it would then be referred to the city attorney for review before we take any action.
It would have to. The staff would refer to the city attorney before we present it to the city council.
Well, before we submit the final copy to recommend to the city council as well.
Yeah.
His drafting expertise would be far superior to mine, as Mr. Beams has pointed out. I'm barely competent to breathe. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on adopting the proposal as amended? I will then prepare a revised copy reflecting all these changes for presentation. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That completes our agenda. Is there any announcements or tricks? Mr. Davis, would you like to make any public comment before we adjourn?
Not for this meeting. Thank you. No surprises here. And I will make some comments at the board meeting. And I appreciate your time. I have not made any comments about anyone in a personal way. So I hope that you all understand that.
I'm sorry that I didn't mean to take them personal, just a reflection on the board and its abilities.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chair, would you please give me a copy of each of those documents so we have?
I certainly do.
I wanted to make sure that Mr. Bemis got these and wouldn't have to resort to any other type of request to get them. So
Okay, thank
You
you.
better get a signed receipt there.
It's on video.
But-
Okay, any other business? I'd entertain a motion that the committee deliver up its report and ask that it be dissolved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention to these matters. We are adjourned and signing die.